trenches. Let's make a righteous ruckus.
Hey, welcome back to this episode, or welcome to this episode of your Righteous Ruckus, of the Ruckus Ruckus, right? Easy for me to say, of the Righteous Ruckus podcast. I'm your convivial host, Riley Lowe. And today I want to get into, well, before I get into it, man, I heard it the other day. It's just so good. I gotta repeat it. It's a classic, I guess, what do you call it? Preacher joke. So God comes to Adam and he says, look, dude, I got the perfect idea for you, the perfect plan. I'm going to make this person for you, and they're going to come meet all your needs. You're going to be just blown away by this. They're never going to complain. They're always going to be able to help you with everything. They're always going to love you. You'll never have to question anything about them. And they'll just always just going to be just basically perfect. They're going to meet every single need you could ever imagine. And Adam goes, well, what's the catch? And God says, well, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. And so Adam says, well, what can I get for a rib? And so that's how we ended up with women, right? I'm just joking on that, though. I want to talk today about counterfeits, all right? And like the Secret Service, in the United States here anyway, the U.S. Secret Service is in charge of kind of heading up the detection of counterfeit money, right? If you hand some, if you've ever seen, like if you give somebody a large bill, whether it be a 50 or 100, the cashier sometimes will take this special little marker, and do that. Hopefully they've been trained and they're not just using a Sharpie on that thing, but to try to detect whether or not a bill is counterfeit. Well, the Secret Service, when they go and they're training, like to learn how to detect the counterfeit bills, one of the things they do is they spend a lot of time handling money, handling real money, legit money, handling it, feeling it, looking at it, analyzing it, because the more they know the real money, the easier it is to detect a counterfeit, right? The easier it is, you say something's not right about this, just by the texture of the paper, by the crispness, by the size of it, by the look of it, and all the little indicators that are on them. It's easier for somebody that knows 100% and very thoroughly the real money. It's easier for them to once they know the real thing, then they can detect a fake or an imposter or a corruption of that thing easier. And so this kind of goes along the same lines today as in this counterfeit is what kind of the counterfeit of God, the counterfeit of God's creation, to be more specific. And let's get into that. So Satan. Sometimes we give Satan too much credit. He's not omnipresent. He's not omnipotent. He's not, a bunch of these attributes of God that he is not. He is very powerful. He's not all powerful. He can't be present everywhere at the same time. He's not loving. We give him too much credit. Have you ever heard people say, I was late to work today. I had a flat tire. Man, the devil's really after me today. It's like, well, is that, or did you just not check the tire pressure, or did you just hit a nail in the road? Did you pick up a nail? There's a lot of other things that can do that. But now there is a lot of things that what Satan can do is he cannot create anything by itself, right? He can't. There's only one creator, and that is God. God created everything. Now, in the world that God created, there is also the option based upon free will to do the wrong thing, make wrong decisions, which is one of the things that got Satan kicked out of heaven. However, that being said, since Satan cannot create anything, his goal and what he loves to do is corrupt or pervert what God has created. And I thought about a few examples here. Listen to this. Let me know what you think about this. God created marriage to be between one man and one woman. We've seen that under attack for a long time. Satan perverts that to say that marriage can be whatever you feel like it is. There's people in other countries that are married to inanimate objects. And I think there was somebody that got married to themselves. It really just turns into a bunch of nonsense whenever you get away from God's design, right? It all falls apart. And there's not much good that comes out of these other relationships that try to masquerade as marriage, right? For millennia, a man and a woman coming together in marriage was the way it was, and anything that was not that was not marriage. And so what has happened is they've perverted that. They, meaning people that are listening to Satan, they've perverted that to be, it's not just limited to that. It can be a man and a man, a woman and a woman, two men and one woman, two women, one man. It can mean a horse. It can mean a car. Those sorts of things. You open up Pandora's box, so to speak, about that. Now let's go to the next one. God says not to have sex outside of marriage. Satan takes that and says, oh, no, just try it out as much as you want. Then move on to the next one. Break up with them, go to the next one, and then try that one out and go to the next one. Or just don't even commit at all and just live together and expect God to bless your play marriage, right? You can just play married, play house, right? And it'll be okay. God will still bless that. Well, it's outside of what God has ordained as marriage and ordained as a healthy relationship. So it can be detrimental, and it's against God's will. That's just the way it is. So Jesus says in John 14:6 that I am the way, the truth, and the life, and nobody comes to the Father except through me. Now, coming to the Father, right? That's getting to go to heaven. No, there's one way to heaven, and that's through Jesus. Satan says there's many ways to get to heaven, and we're all just taking different paths up the same mountain. It's you've heard me reference it on this podcast before, is the Oprah Winfrey gospel, right? Where it's just, whether it doesn't matter whether you're Hindu, Buddhist, Sikh, Christian, Muslim, whatever it is, that's just your path to heaven, right? They're all the same. Well, they're not all the same. They're not all the same. But that's what Satan would have you believe. God creates flowers and plants for beauty, right? Who doesn't look at a golf course, of a well-manicured golf course, and say that's got a sense of beauty to it? Or look at the lush tropical flowers and say that's beautiful. Satan perverts it and says you can take these and turn them into drugs to alter your state of mind, right? James 1:17 says every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow of turning. In other words, that's what it is. It's good. It's good. It's not something evil. That which is good and perfect comes from above, right? So that would mean that which is bad and twisted comes from below. Jesus said to the wicked Pharisees in John 8:23, you are from beneath. I am from above. These are the people that were trying to twist and catch him in a trap, right? A logical trap or a truth trap. And they're trying to twist the word of God. They were trying to twist the truth in order to try to trap him. And he basically says that you are from beneath, in which lines up with that. Evil and corruption is from below, down here where we're at. And God and Jesus and goodness and perfection is from above, right? Sin or evil, it's Frank Turek, I've heard use these, the apologist Frank Turek, I've heard use these examples, and they're great examples, so I'm going to borrow them. Sin or evil, right? This corruption that Satan does, it's like rust in a car. If you take away all the rust in a car, you have a better car. If you take away all the car out of the rust, then you've got nothing, right? This is the logical fallacy of people saying that they can't believe in God because there's so much evil in the world. Well, as I think of Frank Turk, I've heard him say this, the shadows prove the sunshine, right? You can have sunshine without shadows, but you cannot have shadows without sunshine. So just like the rust in the car, it's a corruption of the good car is the rust. But you can't have the rust without the car, right? Another one would be, like I can identify with this one especially, that you take all the cancer out of the body, you have a better body. But you take all the body out of the cancer and you're left with nothing. Sin and evil is just merely a corruption of what God had made for good. Going back to the sex thing outside of marriage, I think it's Frank Turk. Again, I'm referencing him a lot in this if you haven't noticed. But he said sex is kind of like a fire, right, in your house. As long as it's in the fireplace where it belongs, you're fine. But you put that outside of the place it is designed to be, and it will eventually burn your house down. That's what happens when you start looking outside of marriage, or even your relationships. Having sex before marriage, I don't know of anybody that said, I'm glad I did that and had sex as much as I could outside of marriage instead of waiting and being monogamous with one partner my entire life. I don't know anybody that would say what's the test drive in the car is the way to go, right? No. At least not. I mean, maybe worldly people, but I'm not Christian people, godly people would not say that. Most like myself are saying, yeah, that was a bad move. Probably shouldn't have done that. And I would not, if I had to do over again, I would not, right? It's a regret in life, a conviction in my life. So sin doesn't cease being sin just because it becomes popular. All right. It's easy, especially for kids these days, man. They're looking around in the world and they're going, well, is homosexuality or the transgenderism or a million other sins, is that really sin? Or looking at pornography, is any of those things truly sins if everybody's doing it? I mean, it just seems like everybody's doing it. So can it really be that bad? And the truth is, yes, it is sin. Whether or not the culture is following God's path or not, that doesn't mean that sin is not sin. Sin does not cease being sin just because it becomes popular. This morning before reading this, I was reading about the feeding of the 4,000 that took place after the feeding of the famous 5,000, right? The 5,000, of course, was, 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, fed 5,000 men, plus women and children. And then shortly thereafter, they come up on another group of people. And Jesus says, well, let's feed them. And the disciples say, how are we going to feed them? All we have is, I think it was 7 loaves of bread and a few fish. So they had more to start with and less people than they had not too long ago when they witnessed the miracle of Jesus feeding the 5,000. They have less people and more to start with. And you know what they said? How are we going to feed them? All we have is 7 loaves of bread and a few fish, Jesus. How are we going to do that? They had quickly forgotten the miracles that they'd witnessed. Here we are, this day and age, and we're looking back on this going, man, it would have been so cool to be there. Well, these guys were there, and they've got the memory of a goldfish, and they forget what Jesus has already done. And that happens to us too. Oh, so often. It's really sad how much this has happened to, and I'm just talking about me here. It's sad how much this has happened in my life, where I let worry about tomorrow, about the next day, about the future. I look back and sometimes I say, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I don't know how we're going to make it through this situation. When Jesus has already done so much in my life. Jesus has already done so much in my life. The things that I've gone through with Christ are, whether you want to call it momentous, whether you want to call it preposterous, whether you want to call it whatever you want to call it, it's ridiculous. The stuff that he's brought me through. So why would I expect that he would not bring me through another day? Right? Why would I expect anything less? And the thing that I want you to take away from this is how often the enemy tries to corrupt what God has designed for good. And don't believe in the lie. Whenever you start, if you want to know, it's easy. Man, this is what's crazy. Before I ever read the Bible cover to cover for the first time, I'm talking like Genesis 1:1 or Genesis 1 to Revelation, whatever it is, 22. I read what other people thought about the Bible. I think that was a bad mistake, because I already had these preconceptions. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad idea to let your kids go to Sunday school or to coach your kids or do this, to teach your kids biblical concepts before they can read the Bible through on their own. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, it's when you're able to read the Bible through, read it. Go ahead and read it. That way, whenever you're reading extra biblical literature, like Frank Turk stuff or any number of people, then you have the Bible base to filter that through, right? You've got that biblical base since you've read the Bible where you might go, well, I don't know about that. Let me double check this, right? Let me see about this. Just like the Bereans did with Paul, that said that they listened to what Paul had to say and they went home every day and they checked the scriptures to be sure he was lining up with that. And that's what we got to do with this crazy world that we live in. That's bizarro world where up is down and down is up and black is white and white is black, and they just trying to confuse you as much as you can. That's Satan's MO, right? What did he do? He'll sprinkle in this truth and this truth sounding, this thing is truth-ish, right? And it sounds good, like, oh, it's just all about love. Well, love is good, right? Now, how can I go against that? Well, let me filter it through the Bible and realize that it's nothing but sin. Nothing but sin. So when you find yourself being pulled or lured away and tempted and drawn to the corrupt version of things, what you need to do is recognize that by getting in the Word of God, defending yourself against that by getting in the Word of God, praying all the time, and learning more about biblical concepts, learning more about God and about Jesus constantly. But the biggest thing is when you find yourself drifting a little bit, try to catch yourself. Don't get yourself too far away from the dock before you can grab the boat, right? And what I want you to do is lean into Jesus. Lean back into Jesus. Lean into Jesus.